He knew better. He could have said no, but he didn't. They ate of the forbidden fruit. It doesn't say apple, it says the forbidden fruit. And then the world got so wicked. Because after they sinned, Adam and Eve was sent out of the garden, and they had to do everything for themselves. Before, everything was provided for them by God. They didn't have to lift a finger. But now, they did. God made them clothes from animals and sent them on their way. Then the first murder happened after the first birth. You know, they had Cain and Abel, and later on Cain and Abel got older. And Cain killed Abel because of jealousy. Because God showed to him, and God showed more favor to Abel than Cain. Well, they were giving offers of sacrifice. And Abel's sacrifice was from the heart. Cain gave it grudgingly. So Cain killed Abel. World got more wickeder and wickeder. I don't even know if that's a word, wickeder. But the world got so bad that he called on Noah, a man who he found such great love for him. Noah loved God and served him. He feared God. So God called Noah to build an ark. And it took 200 years, I believe. And during that whole time, he was mocked. He was cussed at. He was probably, rocks were probably thrown at him, whatever. He was mocked and laughed at by the rest of the world. Because Noah said there was going to be a flood. Well, there was never a drop of rain before then. Yeah, right. A flood. Sure, whatever you say. Well, came the flood. 200 years later, the flood came. Noah and his family on the ark. The whole world destroyed. Except for 2 of each animal that was on the ark. God has done so much for us. He did so much for Israel because Israel comes from Abraham's seed, a man who had such great faith that God told Abraham to look to the stars. All the stars would be the number of his descendants. And there were millions of stars out there. Millions! And he didn't even have a son yet. But God gave him a son. Named him Isaac. Which means laughter. Laughter because Abraham laughed and his wife Sarah laughed. And then Isaac had a son named Jacob, who was a rebellious son. He had two sons. They were twins. Esau came out first, and Jacob was grabbing the heel of his foot. Jacob stole his blessing to be the heir to everything that Abraham started, that went down to, handed down to Isaac. He deceived Isaac. Jacob was a deceiver. He really, really was. Very rebellious until God got a hold of him on his journey when he left home. And God renamed him Israel. Yeah, Israel. The country today. The people of God. God would say in the Old Testament, I'm the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Jacob means it was changed to Israel. And all those descendants became people of God. But then God sent His Son Jesus to finally set the record straight that no one can get to God except through Him, because He was the blameless, spotless Lamb, the ultimate sacrifice for all sins, for all wickedness. And He was nailed on the cross by the religious leaders and by the rest of the people. We did it. We physically may not have been there, but we did it. Our ancestors did it. We did it. But Jesus said, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. And then He gave up His spirit to God. And He said, it is finished. 3 days later, He rose from the dead, from the tomb He was in. No body left. And then He appeared later on before His disciples all over the area, all over Israel, Jerusalem and everywhere, for 40 days. And then He went to be with God the Father. And He commissioned the disciples, and for anyone else who follows Christ, to go out and preach the world, preach to the world the gospel, baptizing them, discipling them and baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. That's the work that we are to do. That's work for everyone to do. You don't have to be a pastor or a preacher to do that. You can do it from right where you're at. You can do it at work. Well, what will my employer say? Well, if God puts it on your heart to do so, and you lose your job, God's going to take care of you. I don't care. I've seen too many times where God's taken care of His own. And here we are, letting our tongues lash out at a fellow brother because God put it on His heart to say something. I've seen on the internet, on Twitter, people being cursed by another person because